Howdy, partners. Cowboy Worm here today to talk about some cowboy guns that are definitely in need of a buff. Now, what guns are we talking about? Of course, none other than everyone's beloved aggressive scout rifles. These are the 120 scout rifles, things like Dead Man's Tale, Last Rites, what's that other one from the raid or the dungeon? I can't remember it. And stuff like that. Oh yeah, there's only 3, sorry. But 120 round per minute scout rifles, specifically Tex Mechanica scout rifles, hint, hint, they suck in the Crucible. You're seeing some background gameplay of me using Dead Man's Tale. Dead Man's Tale obviously is the best of these 3 in this archetype, right? But it is an exotic, so I want to talk about why they suck and where I think that they could be made better in terms of, Crucible gameplay. Starting off with why they suck. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. Starting off with why do they suck? It's quite simple. Their TTK is very, very slow, and I don't know, I know that it's just a feeling, right? There's no hard data behind it, but they don't feel very good to use. I don't know if it's the reticle, the aim assistance. Actually, I think it is something to do with the aim assistance, or what, but they already have a slow time to kill, which is not a good thing. And Bungie decided to stick them with this certain class of weapon, Tex Mechanica weapons, that almost like incentivize, hip firing, right? And I think that this was the fun factor is there. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think it's still just, it's a weak choice. Now, of course, the gameplay you're watching is on Endless Vale, so it's mostly like medium to close range, so I'm trying to hip fire as much as possible. But one of the biggest issues I see with 120 round per minute scout rifles, right, is their aim assistance or their stickiness or their bullet magnetism, maybe a combination of all 3, whatever, is absolutely atrocious, especially on long range maps. When I think of a map like Disjunction, for example, right? Disjunction, very long range map. It's got massive sight lines, stuff like that. When I want to use a scout rifle, a 120 should be one of the best options at incredibly long ranges, right? Like it just should be. Dead Man's Tale would be the one exception because it's hip fire thing, the whole hip fire vibe that's got going on. But the other 2 legendary ones, they should be the cream of the crop when it comes to long range engagements. But I find myself constantly getting outgunned by things like Jade Rabbit, right? Things like, Polaris Lance, which granted they are exotics and they are 150s, but I'm talking like cross map here, right? Cross map, like longest sight lines that you can find in Destiny 2. It struggles because the stickiness is just not there. And I think, what is it? The long arm, which is the ARC legendary 120 scout, it has like 52 aim assistance or something like that. And Jade Rabbit, which again, I know Jade Rabbit is an exotic, but I think is like, it's at 80. And I think its catalyst gives it like plus 20. So it's sitting at 60, right, at its base level, and then you can get the catalyst with 80 or whatever it is. I don't exactly know the numbers, but it feels like these scout rifles, they have very low aim assistance. And I think this is Bungie's way of like trying to make them not as deadly as sniper rifles. Because I mean, let's be honest, these types of scout rifles would definitely be treading in sniper territory, right? Snipers, long range, blah, blah, blah. These scout rifles would be doing the same thing. But I think Bungie forgot that they made them 120s. They gave them a 1 second TTK, which is among the slowest in the game, right? Like that's on par with the high impact hand cannons. I don't think there's actually any primaries in the game that kill slower than 1 second. So it's already in the slowest killing archetype. And then it doesn't stick to people at ranges. Not only that, but the zoom sitting at, I believe it's 18 zoom. Dead Man's Tale might be lower, but the other 2 are sitting at 18 zoom, which is a 1.8. That is a really, really weird zoom because that is pretty standard in that scout rifle like category, but the sights are what kills it, right? While other scout rifles have this clean open sight, no, they have that like U shape, right? It's like there we go. It's like this shape, and then a little dot right here, right? Kind of something like that. But it's very actually it's really, really tight. It's really, really tight. It completely obstructs a lot of your view, right? So you're trying to shoot targets. It's blocking long range targets, like where you should be attacking people at those incredibly long ranges. players literally can be entirely covered by the left and right side of that sight. I don't know. It's really, really awkward. That's the reason why they feel so bad. And of course, the hip fire thing. Again, Dead Man's Tale is excluded from the hip fire situation, but Dead Man's Tale, again, is an exotic, right? They are trying to make the Tex Mechanica stuff, like they want to make it like, oh, like we want it to be hip fire cowboy gun, but it just doesn't work with this archetype. Like this archetype should be a long range weapon except for Dead Man's Tale, right? So that's the issues. Now let's talk about how we can fix them. In general, the easiest thing to do, just bump up that aim assistance. Give them high aim assistance. I know that it is possible. Hey, sorry. There's an example of it, of what we were talking about yesterday in the video, or in the Void Hunter video, working. But anyways, sorry, I get sidetracked. I didn't take my medicine today. Okay, but these scout rifles, like the biggest thing that Bungie can do to assist aggressive scouts is to bring up that aim assistance, or give them like a sweet spot, so to speak, right? Like I know that Bungie doesn't have sweet spots in the game currently, but a game right off the top of my head that had a sweet spot mechanic was Battlefield 1, right? In Battlefield 1, your sniper rifles had sweet spots. So anywhere between 30 and like 80 meters, it would not require a headshot. You get a head or upper body shot to get the kill, right? So it was a generous increase in your one-shot kill potential, but it was only between those ranges. I think they could potentially do something similar for these 120 scouts, Close range, their aim assistance not too great, but as you get further away, that aim assistance gets stronger and stronger. That way, if you're trying to use it at long ranges, it's working for you. It'll be much better to, snag those crits and stuff, because again, at a 120 round per minute fire rate, that's slow. I mean, every other scout rifle is going to smack it. Okay, and there's no scout, right? There's no lanes, there's no angles, there's no nothing in the map that would ever warrant like just increasing the range of 120s to like maximum range, right? Like even on Disjunction, which I think is the biggest map of the game, at the longest sight lines you can hit, 150 round per minute scouts can hit their maximum damage from that distance. So, increasing the damage range of these wouldn't do anything, especially not with the way the scope is. It just feels awkward. So I think that increasing that aim assistance would be a fantastic option. And I would just say give it a flat increase. Never mind the whole sweet spot mechanic. As I sit here and think about it, like who can realistically use something like Last Rites or the long arm at close quarters while ADSing? Like 18 zoom is really kind of high for close quarters engagement, right? So bump up the aim assistant, like let us have more freedom, more stickiness, and that's the trade-off. Like 150 scouts, they don't have as high aim assistance, but they have a faster TTK. If you're accurate, 150 scout will do much better than 120s, but 120s can now hang because they have, say like a base of like 70 aim assistance or something like that, which I don't know. I'm not a dev at Bungie, so I don't know how the aim assistance, like, the rates or whatever, but the crits should be much easier to hit at long ranges. And right now, man, I don't know. I feel like I will shoot at somebody, I'll be right on them, and the bullet just right past their face, right? But yeah, that's the general like fix, I would say, for these scout rifles. Another thing Bungie could potentially do, if they really want to build into the Tex Mechanica hip fire thing, just increase the hip fire accuracy by a little bit, right? Obviously Dead Man's Tale is the king of hip fire. It's an exotic. You cannot have something that matches Dead Man's Tale, a 120 scout that matches Dead Man's Tale, because it would ruin the exoticness of DMT. But increasing that hip fire accuracy or whatever, at least by a little bit, so you didn't have to fully build into it. I mean, I don't know if y'all have been watching in previous videos, but we do an Arc Hunter build where it's the cowboy build. We use Last Word, we use long arm, and our long arm has opening shot, hip fire grip. It has a hip fire grip mod on it. Like, we build into the hip fire. It still is terrible at hip fire. It's terrible at hip firing, right? And I feel like if Bungie wants to keep it as this, this cowboy hip fire and blah, blah, blah gun, they need to make that hip fire a little bit better, right? But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I don't think a damage increase is necessary. Like I said, I think the main thing is just increasing the aim assistance would be the primary, opinion I have of what should change. But again, the second one would be make the hip fire a little bit better. Now, in terms of DMT, because DMT is a whole different animal, right? DMT is a very unique weapon, but it's fallen from grace, and I think it fell too much from grace. And I would like to see some buffs to bring it back into not a busted or an OP state, but a state where it's better. And the first change that I would make, is when you're invisible, please, for the love of I want to say something, but please, for the love of God, Bungie, let us be able to see the reticle. And I don't know if you've if you saw it in the gameplay here, but at some point in the gameplay, I'm aiming down sights while invisible Dead Man's Tale. The gun is completely invisible. There's no little red dot, there's no reticle, there's no nothing. Like, it is so difficult to shoot when you're invisible. That's a change that I don't know how it's been permitted to exist so long. But yeah, that's one change. But in terms of making Dead Man's Tale better, I think they need to revert the change that they had, where basically when you were hip firing, you got a faster fire rate, right? So the original DMT, when you hip fired it, you would get a faster fire rate. If you ADS, that's when it would fire at 120. So I think it was 120 ADS, and if you're hip firing, it would fire at 150 rounds per minute. I think that they should bring that back, right? I think they should bring it back. Currently, the way Dead Man's Tale works is at up to ×4 stacks of cranial spike, it fires at 120 rounds per minute. But when you get that 5th stack, you get 100, it'll fire at 180 rounds per minute, right? Which is insanely fast. Like, that's a very fast TTK. But the problem is that, like, I don't know if y'all have tried to get ×5 stacks of cranial spike in the Crucible. It's not really easy, because cranial spike does not last very long. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I think that just, maybe having 3 different fire rates. When you're ADSing at all times, it is 120 rounds per minute, whether you have cranial spike ×5 or not. Then when you're hip firing at all times, it is 150 rounds per minute. And then if you get cranial spike ×5, then it's 180 rounds per minute, right? Like, I think that would be a fair buff to the weapon that would make it see more usage and more viability, but without breaking it. Because remember, one of the reasons why they changed it was because people thought, oh, it kills too fast. 150 rounds per minute is too fast. There's nothing you can do about it. Very easy to use. It wasn't the fact that it shot at 150 rounds per minute that made it easy to use. It's the fact that the hip fire, like, the hip fire cone was insane, right? Like, literally cross map, it would snag crits while you're hip firing. Like you would aim down sights and miss crits, but you'd hip fire and hit them, right? When they nerfed Dead Man's Tale, they nerfed that. So now I think, what is the drop off? Like 25 meters or something like that? Like, after 25 meters, hip firing is not really a viable option anymore. I think. You have to be much more accurate when you hip fire. So I think that reverting that change as well, or not reverting that change, but in introducing these changes, 120, 150, 180 would be a great way to bring Dead Man's Tale back into the fold. Not OP, not too strong or anything like that, but it would make it have more utility. But of course, I want to hear your thoughts on it. We've talked about all aggressive scout rifles, 120s. What do you think about the changes? Do you think they just need more aim assistance? Do you think they need other changes that maybe we didn't think of in this video? I like to read y'all's comments, because some of y'all have some incredible ideas on things. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Of course, let me know your thoughts on the Dead Man's Tale changes that I proposed here. Do you think it'd be a good idea? Do you think it'd be a bad idea? Blah, blah, blah. That's it for me, guys. Like the video if, of course, you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content. And with that being said, guys, I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye for now.